Okay, so I just finished installing the connecting rods. Um, just follow the manual there. The stuff they talk about in there doesn't really need to be repeated. So make sure you've got a manual and that you follow it. Balancer installation. This is confusing, I think, to a lot of guys who work on these engines because there's like a million chains and the balancers are a little confusing. So first thing right out of the gate here, this engine actually has two different types of balancers depending on which model you have. So in the manual, it'll show removable sprockets with rubber dampers, and these dampers or these balancers I have do not have the removable sprocket. So when you look at the damper, you can see there's no, or that when you look at the balancer, you can see there's no circlip, there's no C-clip. There is no way to separate this sprocket from the balancer weight. So this is an updated version of the balancers. So don't worry about having to separate those if you have the new ones. When you put them in the engine, the markings on the balancer have to be installed in a very specific way. So I just want to simplify this for folks. First off, you put in the balancer chain adjustment tensioner shaft. And it's good to note that even though these engines are old, the spring should still work pretty good. So you can see I'm just adjusting that as if it was on the bike. And if I was to loosen this nut here and it was loose, it should automatically tension itself. So, you know, if it's feeling stuck, you can wiggle it back and forth a little bit to try and break up some crusties. But it should be able to just automatically tension on its own. You have to wiggle it a bit, then it should tension on its own to where it needs to go. So that's that. When you put the balancers into the engine, here is sort of the breakout. This is how it says it in the manual, so I'm just going to show you visually. On the balancer mark for the front of the crankcase, the TC is flush with the deck of the upper case half. So you can see there, the TC line is flush. And with the crankshaft, because it's got its balancers here, 1 through 4, those are aligned by the mark here. Underneath this engine mark, you can see the stamp that's a line, and it goes straight in line with the deck as well. So you can see how that's right there aligned with the upper half of the crankcase. And that's because it's got a sprocket too. So the sprocket here is driving this whole system, and this needs to be aligned correctly, otherwise your engine's going to rattle apart and have a bad time. So that TH on the rear balancer needs to be aligned flat with the deck of the crankcase as well. So that's how the manual asks you to do it. You got 3 balancers, 2 free and 1 as a crank system, and they all need to be aligned. This one, the TH line, goes flush with the crankcase upper half, and that's how you know that that one is aligned and correctly installed. Make sure that your alignment of these 2 balancers is being done on a crankcase or on a crankshaft that has been correctly aligned. So that's important to note. When you look in the manual, it tries to describe it to you. Like I said, the rear one TH here, the crankshaft is aligned, and the front balancer is also aligned. So this is just a visualization for folks. So if you're reading the manual and you're like, I have no idea what this is trying to tell me, they're just trying to make sure that when you put this engine back together, that the balancing system functions the way that it's supposed to from the factory. There's balancers on the crankshaft, and there's 2 free spinning balancers as a system that need to be installed as well. This gets installed in the cap for the main crankshaft, or for the crankshaft bearings and everything else. This gets installed via the adjustment shaft. So you got the adjustment shaft balancer, the balancers on the crankshaft and the balancer that goes in the upper cap. Hopefully that's helpful to folks who are trying to do this on their own. Yes. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. That's pretty much it. We'll be right back, I guess.